Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you all to the series Apprenticeship Dialogue, Understanding the Trends in the Apprenticeship System. We recently launched the Apprenticeship Outlook Report for H2 2021, indicating the industry sentiments in apprenticeship engagement. The report indicates that there is a 4% increase in the intent to hire compared to H1. Apparently, about 45% of the organization have stated the growth in the apprenticeship hiring as compared to 41% in the H1 of the calendar year. We kind of analyze 18 different sectors to gauge the sentiments for apprenticeship hiring, and 17 out of the 18 sectors have shown a positive net apprenticeship outlook. Interestingly, the small enterprises have shown the highest growth rate of apprenticeship engagement compared to medium and large enterprises as compared to H1 NAO. The reasons that cited by the organization for increase in the apprenticeship hiring is that it reduces the skill gap, which is a major concern for the industry, and also it kind of offsets the impact of COVID, which is the workforce scarcity which has developed over a period of during the COVID time. Interestingly, Delhi and Kolkata have emerged as the cities which have preference, or I would say more preference, for the female apprentices, and Mumbai and Hyderabad are gender agnostic. To deliberate on these current trends, we have with us a diverse panel to understand their viewpoints and learn from their experiences. We have with us Mr. Gyan Prakash, who is the President and CEO for the Oil and Gas Division at Kalapataru Power Transmission Limited. We have Mr. Rajeev Kumar, who is the Vice President HR L&T Infotech. And we have Mr. Sanjeev Meghani, who is the Head HR and Customer Retention at Care Health Insurance. I, on behalf of NETAP, welcome you all and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So I think let's begin with the dialogues for this session. And I cited these some of the trends where there is a preference for the gender preference for apprenticeship engagement. The smaller enterprises are now coming forward in doing apprenticeship, which have largely stayed away. And interestingly, now the non-metros are catching up with metros. So what, according to you, are the most significant trends that you see will have an impact in times to come? So, Mr. Gyan Prakash, why don't we begin with you and understand your viewpoint as we go later to the others to understand theirs, sir?
Sure. The findings of the Outlook report give an extremely encouraging positive signal for growth of Indian economy. As a matter of fact, other economic indicators already reconfirm the trends of economy bouncing back after the COVID setback. The three hiring trends thrown up by the report are all collaborative and solidly demonstrate the success of the government's drive to create an enabling environment for business to grow, spread all over the country rather than remaining centered in metro cities. Small and medium business units to thrive alongside the large ones, thus making a wide base, and provide equal opportunity to both genders to contribute to the nation's development and growth. The programs like Startup India, Make in India, Nipun India, Skill India, Beti Padhao, Beti Bachao, Gram Jyoti Yojana, etc., are all aimed at providing the conducive environment for development and growth of the nation. However, most impactful of the three trends will be the non-metros catching up with metros, followed by gender parity. Small businesses need a location which results in lower costs of overheads. If they are located in metros, then their costs become unviable. That is why the trend of non-metros catching up is very significant. And gives clear signals of a widespread growth in coming years. Gender parity is yet another important indicator that demonstrates that the girls of the country will be taking up more and more opportunities in future. This will result in more income and more disposable money which means the driver of the economy is on the way.
Yeah, so I think it's a very valid point mentioned. I think it's definitely it's an indicator of the growth in the economy, and obviously we need more women participation in the workforce. I think there are no brainers to where the impact that it has to the society as well, and also how it also adds to the network. The net income for the country as well. But I think it's an absolutely very valid point stated, on these trends. Mr. Sanjeev, what have been your observation? What's your viewpoint on these trends, sir? Sanjeev, you're on mute.
Yes, I got that. I got that. Yeah. So, Sumit, I think I feel it's a mix of everything, right? Today, when we look at us as an organization, and when we also look at us as an industry, so I'll talk more about the industry. I mean, we represent today a fairly large industry, which is the insurance industry, and we have quite a lot of players in the life side, in the non-life side, and today in the standalone health as a specialized insurance industry. So when we look at the industry, the growth which is coming of these insurance companies, whether it's on the distribution side or even in the employment side or in the employee side, is more coming from the non-metros, right? I mean, while metros definitely, each of our companies would have a large presence, a strong presence, but I think the non-metros is what we call the emerging markets, which are like definitely growing. And our major growth comes from these non-metro cities. So we feel one, definitely, as Sir very rightly said, we have huge hiring plans, and these hiring plans and the growth is more of the apprentices is coming from non-metro cities, right? Our business and is growing, it's expanding in these cities. So what has helped us over the last year and a half, when pandemic struck almost in March 2020, the first 3 months we were slightly cautious in terms of hiring. But over the last year and 3 months, or last year and 5 months or so, we've been only growing, right? We've been growing in business, and we've been only growing in terms of hiring people. And I think apprentices have played a major role in terms of closing the gap, the skill gap, as well as the employee count gap, and especially, as I said, in the non-metros time. So it's the right time for us to hire more apprentices in the non-metros. We, as an organization and even as an industry, I feel, since we represent insurance, we've done a lot of survey research, and we've done a lot of work. And we feel that today insurance as a product is a very simple product, right? I mean, we deal in health insurance. So a customer buys a policy, and let's say if a claim comes throughout the year, he or she gets the claim settled basis the documentations provided and basis the admissibility of the claim. If there is no claim, nothing comes back to the customer. So it's a very simple product to sell. So when we hire apprentices, we look at a right mindset. So for us as an industry, we don't really look at gender, whether we should hire more women or more men. We look at employees from the right mindset point of view. If women or men or whatever, I mean, as I said, we have absolutely neutral this thing. So our focus is hiring the right person with the right mindset, right? So gender preferences are definitely not something which we are inching closer to, right? But yes, having said that, if we feel that the productivity of male apprentices is coming better, we would still be keen to hire more of them. If productivity of female apprentices is coming better, we'll be
gender agnostic. I think you said that, right? It's depending on the productivity levels and the performance of the people, which basically drive the hiring, right?
Yes. So that so for us, it's like a non-metro to metro is more important than a gender diversity.
Sure. So I think what I get to sense from your viewpoints are that because there's a demand coming from there, it's easy to create the supply through these. It's easy to create that talent, to cater to that kind of a business demand locally as well through these apprenticeships. We're able to develop the talent and the workforce for yourself.
Absolutely.
Great, fantastic. I think. What about Mr. Rajeev? What's been your take on it? Representing the IT sector, what's your viewpoint on these trends, sir?
I have a very different view. It was quite interesting to go through this report. And I was reflecting upon and really trying to see how it is, because to me, it's showing a clear sign of evolution of workforce and society from a developing country mindset to a developed country mindset. And that is where I would like to put across that if you really see the skill thing, right, an apprentice is really getting a lot of attention because of a lot of things which is being discussed now on skill development, the skill gap and all that. And I think apprenticeship was there in our society, in our industrial setups, but now it has given a very, very revigored, attention towards. And to that, into these three things which you are talking about, one is a clear indication of, and I come from an industry where gender diversity is a focused KPI for us. So how do we encourage women participation in work is one of our focus area for the company. And also that is also contributing to the society in a big way. So from that, I see the gender coming into this is a very, very encouraging, because today it is only the IT industry which are focusing on that. But as an economy, as a country, we are getting into it. That's a very, very encouraging side. And needless to say that the entire country is going to get benefited out of it. They will have a different, diversified workforce talent pool to kind of get it. And it will create a different movement towards employability of women force, and also what in the literatures you see that a middle class society moving from 15% of the population of a country, when it becomes towards 70%, that becomes the transition from a developed to developed. So that's first. The second thing which we talked about, the small company, right? That's also a very encouraging trend. And COVID has actually created a very, very different level field for all the companies, especially with the induction of technologies and all that. People are not really worried that what size of the company is providing these solutions or benefits or services. It is how efficiently and effectively they are. And I think COVID has been a clear a player for making a very equilibrium around it. That's
so I think COVID has really accelerated a lot of stuff, whether it's for the digitization, whether it's to do with, your remote working or the new trends in the working culture. And definitely it has given a fillip to, apprenticeship as well, because we've seen that, the whole aspect of vocal for local, how the organization have resorted to apprenticeship to create talent out of the local pool of people that are available and upskill them, creating them into talent resources for themselves. So I think it's a very valid point coming from all of you. But considering that, your organization and, we're talking about, Mr. Sanjeev also coming from the insurance background, which represents the services sector, which has largely kind of stayed away. Look, usually we've seen it's the retail, which has the largest deployment or engager or for the apprentices. But insurance is one of yours, and even, let's say, your IT as well. I think they are very, I would say that's still at the brink of, where they are yet to take off. But it's heartening to see that your organization are already engaging with apprentices and can possibly send trends in the sector itself and can motivate them and say, hear from you that, what actually prompted you to kind of get started with the apprenticeship. So maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Rajeev, just to get your viewpoint on this case, that what prompted you to get started on the apprenticeships?
Apprenticeship traditionally has also been a tool to build that skill gaps. Perhaps this was being used in a different segment itself.
Yes, largely manufacturing has been done.
Yeah, and as the legislative activism has also come up, which means now more and more areas has been expanded to cover, apprenticeships. So it's a welcome, because, the point is that anyway we were taking, trainees, because for us, for IT, one of the major sources is fresh hiring. And I think we have just transformed and converted our fresh hiring programs into an apprenticeship mechanism, because it it helps us to do it in a very focused manner that way. And it creates a different consistent focus and sustenance toward building the pipeline to serve the business.
Great. So I think it's more a talent development, talent creation, basically largely has been
absolutely
your stance. Okay. What about you, Mr. Gyan Prakash? I think historically, the manufacturing side of it has always been the engager for apprenticeship. Largely, it has been. But for how long have you been doing apprentices? What has been your success rates, and what are your experience in doing apprenticeship you would like to share with us, sir?
Okay, so first thing, let me clarify that we are not manufacturing. We are also a service sector.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
we provide infrastructure to the oil and gas industry. So we're actually a service sector company.
Fantastic. So would love to hear, why did you get started on it?
Yes. Actually, if you look at it, an organization always needs the knowledgeable and experienced persons to run the business, whichever organization it may be. However, as the business grows, there is always a need to add more and more people to the organization. Everyone would like to have an experienced person, but one can't find so many because there is always competition and availability is limited, while the requirement is manifold due to the growth of the economy. Moreover, there is always an issue of cultural fit with the experienced people. They always carry a baggage. Therefore, most of the companies which have to grow must consciously opt for hiring fresh hands, who they normally would train themselves and mold as per company's requirement, inculcate the company's culture in them without resistance coming from the previous package. But not all companies can afford to train such fresh hands in-house while keeping them in employment. Therefore, there is a need to have a fresh hand which has already been trained to quickly take up the productive work in a company. This training is nothing but apprenticeship. Some companies have this within their company, and some people are running an apprenticeship business outside. So there are some very clear advantages of hiring young people who have undergone apprenticeship, whether in-house or through an outsourced agency. And those outsourced agencies run tailor-made curriculum and on-job training. I actually hired the apprentices in this company as long back as in 2009.
Oh,
and I was approached by a colleague of mine who had actually retired. He gave me a proposal to offer to us for employment such candidates who he had trained. He had provided apprenticeship to them as per our business requirements. So he knew our business, he knew what we need, he had trained them, and he offered them for employment. His modus operandi was to take fresh graduates from school and colleges for a period of 6 months, give them classroom and on-the-job training, and then offer them for employment to the organization like ours. I agreed to this proposal and interviewed about 10 apprentices. Out of those, we selected 5 and we employed, and they did very well and rose in my organization very quickly.
Okay.
So thereafter, we made it a practice and a policy to every year interview people from his center, and we are employing regularly.
Great.
So that's how this has started.
Fantastic. So clearly what comes out to me is that, to get the right, to create the right talent, which is the right culture fitment, and also the productivity elements are some of the reasons which kind of prompted. And, it's good to see that you are engaged for over a decade now in apprenticeship and how your organization is leveraging the benefits of it. What about you, Mr. Sanjeev, coming from the insurance sector? What has prompted you to take up apprentices?
Yes, Sumit. So I, like Mr. Prakash, he and his company has been associated with almost a decade now, but unfortunately, for us, it's, we were introduced to this concept itself just 3.5 years back by the BFSI Skill Council of India, right? They came, and since then we were in talks with some firms, and obviously we were in talks with team leads as well. And finally, almost a year and a half back or so, we just kind of reached out once again. And what really prompted us was that first, we were creating we were generating employment opportunities in India. I mean, we thought that we'll do a social job while we give employment to people who are experienced, we give employment to people who have served different companies, but this was to hire fresh trainees and create a lot of employment opportunities. So definitely this was the first reason. Two, we also felt that it's slightly, the government itself has given a lot of favorable reforms on Apprenticeship Act, so like things like, there are no obligations of statutory compliances on the apprentices, right, which makes it easier for the individual as well, because eventually whatever money or whatever salary they generate, they take home that entire salary without having to pay or any, for any deduction. And it's also cost saving for the organization as well, for the employer as well. Right.
I mean, sorry to interrupt you here, Mr. Sanjeev, sorry here, but do you think that's the right metric? Because I understand it's a, is it like more like a a workforce and a gap of cheap labor, or do you think that there could be higher returns, which you could get over a period of time because you've just got started? But what is it that you're anticipating, that what kind of a returns that you could possibly get by being invested in the apprenticeship,
Yeah, so what I was just trying to say, Sumit, is that we also felt that something very interesting came that today in the entire scheme of affairs, we also felt that today by hiring apprentices, not only one, you're creating employment. Two, I think it's helping organizations to kind of also build on the CSR activity which the organizations are building. Right. So, as it is, we do a lot of CSR activity whereby we are promoting a lot of, social events. So we thought this is also one of the ways which will help us to promote certain CSR activities. And three, I would say that, what prompted us even further was that today, when we look at hiring apprentices, if we can train them well in the first 6 months, if we can onboard them well, if we can induct them well, I think what we are doing is we are creating a good pipeline of leadership in the organization. True. Right? So in the longer run, we feel that, you get apprentices who are fresh from college, they come with fresh ideas. If you train them well, if you handhold them well, if you kind of onboard them well, within 6 months to 1 year, they understand the tricks of the trade. They are able to deliver well, and within 2 years or so, you have a ready leader who can manage a set of team members for you, right? Yeah. So I think these were 3 or 4 ideas, or these were 3 or 4 instances which kind of helped us, and prompted us to kind of start hiring apprentices.
Fantastic. I think, yes, it definitely helps you to create a human capital for yourself, and you can identify your future leaders whom you can groom right from as they are raw of the organization and industry. But I think a very valid point also stated by you was also on the CSR front. How you actually contribute towards the livelihood enhancement and the employability of the youth, which kind of catapults the entire career landscape for them, and how it actually boosts the formal employment and the socio-economic growth. So I think that's a very valid point. I think many organizations today do consider CSR as one of the reasons to get started with, when they're contributing back to the society here. Coming to the next question is that that the pandemic has brought about a huge shift in hiring and in the labor patterns across the globe today. How has that impacted apprenticeship engagement in your sector or hiring? Has pandemic, as Mr. Rajeev was talking about pandemic some time back, what has been any impact that COVID had or pandemic had in your apprenticeship engagement? Sanjeev, why don't you go ahead on this first?
Yeah. Fortunately, Sumit, the industry which we represent, fortunately, we can say that the pandemic has only helped us fuel our growth better, right? So the sector and industry, we've seen huge growth during at least, our distribution geographically, in terms of our headcount, right? So we see that hiring of apprentices continues to grow. What we were almost a year back and what we are today, we have there's an increase of almost I would say 120% in terms of the apprentice headcount since April 2020 to 2021, and today we feel that the overall apprentice headcount forms, while we started just recently last year, we feel that today the overall headcount of apprentice is little over 2.5%, 3% of the total workforce, which we obviously plan to increase. So I think, pandemic definitely has, for us in our case, I would say it has helped us to increase, the hiring of apprentices. And also, as I said, it has brought in a new perspective that if we hire more apprentices, it helps us grow our future workforce and adds value to our business, right? So the most commonly cited advantage we see when we are hiring these is that, it's easy, they come with a fresh mind. It's easy to develop skills for them, develop skills which are relevant to the organization. And so this entire act kind of becomes a kind of a multifaceted, helps us to these fresh apprentices, enhance their knowledge, which thereby kind of helps us yield the productivity, get better productivity. And at the same time, which is a very big point which I want to make, is it helps us control our attrition as well, right? Okay. So if we see all of this, we feel that the pandemic has only fueled the hiring of apprentices, and it's only on a growth trajectory.
Fantastic. I think there's a good, pointers mentioned here. In fact, we've also seen that, while their organization had some experience in doing apprenticeship, but how pandemic has made them to scale their apprenticeship, hiring only because to cater to the, the kind of void which had created because of the lack of availability of the people during the time. But your, sector as well, which witnessed the whole growth because of the business growth kind of a thing, and you had to cater to it. But do you see that this growth is going to remain the same percentage, or it's going to settle down in some time because it was maybe momentary, or do you think that it's going to continue to happen, this kind of business growth?
So Sumit, I'll tell you, the health insurance industry over the last 7 years or so has been growing by a CAGR of almost 30%. Right. This year, we've seen that growth to be almost upwards of 40%. So even if we have to consider the growth of pre-COVID levels also, pandemic levels also, it will be on an upward trend of 30-35% itself. So it will continue. We still feel that India largely remains uninsured, right? And most of the expense which Indians do is out of the pocket expense. They are not covered under a government scheme, or they don't have insurance. So, still, most of the Indians, they shell out money for healthcare from their pocket. So we still feel there's a lot of need, and I think the growth will continue.
Sure. And that will obviously, you said that's how your apprenticeship engagement will also kind of increase accordingly. Fantastic. Great. Mr. Gyan Prakash, what has been your view? How has, pandemic impacted your engagement with apprentices, sir?
Well, quite opposite to what happened to the insurance sector. Ours was a service sector, which was in the field. So during the pandemic, there was a significant adverse impact on our business. Since there was no growth, no fresh hiring was taking place. It was all stalled. Now that the businesses are looking up for growth, fresh hiring will start.
Okay.
The pandemic brought about a major change in attitude and practice in terms of the reduced significance of physical presence. If you recall, what really has happened is this pandemic has taught us that it is not necessary to be physically available everywhere for interviews, interactions, and meetings. So this has not only made things easier for a very large number of people and organizations, but has resulted in significant time and cost savings, particularly on travel. So whatever hiring that we resorted to during and post-pandemic so far, we have entirely depended upon the virtual platform.
Okay.
Internet of Things and virtual meetings have lifted the efficiency levels tremendously.
Okay.
But not everyone picked it up quickly, and the training plans were badly affected in the initial several months, as was the education in schools and colleges. Therefore, there has been a little gap in availability of trained apprentices right now vis-a-vis the demand that is building up, which is building up very fast across the country. And I'm sure that facilities for apprentice programs are being geared up to meet the demand, and we will overcome the gap soon. The best part is that the young generation is quite tech savvy, and they are taking up the new challenges very quickly. And so we have all the hope that we will have an array and a pipeline of such talent, which would fulfill our requirements as the growth comes in the, has already started and as it grows further.
Sure. So I think may not be from the engagement point of view, it could have an adverse effect, but I think the adoption of technology and the systemic changes that you had to do has been an impact in your engagement with the, usually at workplace.
Absolutely.
Sure. What about you, Mr. Rajeev? How has that impacted, in your apprenticeship engagement?
I think during pandemic, at the onset of pandemic, first few months were slightly slow for us because I think the predictability in terms of, the future looks quite hazy and bleak at that point of time in the first few months. So we got little slow in the sense as an organizations. I think last 1 year or maybe, just about from July last year onwards, it was a stellar growth for us because, we realized that while this is a gain for us, for the entire humanity, but I think there is also a boon inside. And that was demand was, everything moved to offline to online, right? And I think that was a greatest opportunity for IT industry as a whole. And I think we are seeing the demand in such a way, and many of the leaders you must be seeing, the demand is unprecedented. The challenge is on supply and fulfilling it. So first few months were a little bit of confusion in life, but after that it is a great run. I think every organization have really picked up in terms of putting fresh hiring, apprenticeship, and all that, because there is a huge talent gap for the industry currently. Fantastic for us, but that's how the story is.
Great, sir. Fantastic, sir. Coming to the next question is on the skill gap. We see that there's a skill gap is often talked about when we discuss about, the gap between the employment and the employability, or the education actually. So how big a role do you think that apprenticeship can play in filling the skill gap? And how would you rate that? How would you rate the skill and employability portion of the apprentice after they have completed their program? So, Mr. Gyan Prakash, why don't we start from you on this particular question? How do you think that apprenticeship could bridge the skill, the gap which exists between the education and employment? And what is your take? How do you find these apprentices once they have completed their apprenticeship training, sir? So your viewpoint.
I think it's a very simple answer. It needs no rocket science to see the difference between fresh graduates and those who have undergone apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
There are some very clear reasons why employability of all graduates is rather low. The colleges and schools generally focus upon the knowledge of principles and fundamentals with some examples of practical use of the same in life. But real application of such knowledge is generally left open. Second point, while a wide spectrum of knowledge is imparted in schools and colleges with a purpose to give an overall understanding of things and give a little wider perspective to these students, but the organizations tend to mostly use only some part of such knowledge, and they want it applied directly into the business. So there is a wide gap. Further, the person only in a few particular ways and methods which actually translate into the processes of the business.
Yeah.
And that is the need of the business. So a fresh graduate has no clue about it.
True.
Either part of the knowledge which would be utilized, nor he has the understanding in which fashion would his knowledge be utilized and how it could be applied to the business. So large organizations have created training facilities where the graduates are given extensive training on the application of the knowledge acquired by them towards the business needs, besides orienting them with various business processes and culture. But small and medium companies are unable to afford such facilities. But they still need fresh hands for growth. And that is where apprenticeship programs fill the gap. Those who run such apprentice shops, these people must work very closely with the target companies to develop a curriculum which would meet the requirement of that organization, prepare a fresh graduate into a productive employee at the end of the program, and he would have a sustainable employment for a long term. So apprenticeship is definitely irreplaceable. It has to be there. And it helps not only the organizations to quickly put the employees into productive use, but also provides so much of confidence to the newcomers that they become useful for the organization. And that gives them the confidence, that gives them the esteem, and they become proud employees of a company. And that's exactly what is needed.
Absolutely, sir. I think the whole void is because of the lack of the application of knowledge, which kind of sets in. And I think the apprenticeship gives them a light platform to apply, to get those, the mechanics of the knowledge, that how you can apply this and, gain, learn more, stuff. So basically, yes, you're saying is that should be both the cognitive and the non-cognitive skills, which are essential, and most importantly, the confidence that you've spoken about, which kind of helps them to grow and perform better. Great. Mr. Sanjeev, what's been your take on this? How do you think apprenticeship can bridge the skill gap? And what's been your take on the apprentices? I mean, though it's too nascent for you at this point of time, but what do you expect that, how do you think that they would be shaping up? Or if you have any experience of such, you may want to share with us.
Yeah, so Sumit, as you rightly said, it's a very nascent stage for us, but I think what we've seen largely over the last year and a half is definitely one of the trends which is emerging out is that, when we hire employees or individuals with experience, they come with their own mindset, they come with their own baggage, they come with their own understanding of the industry, which is very difficult for us to kind of, change that. And it's like, it takes a lot of effort. I mean, if they've been taught something, if they've been educated something in a particular company that this is how you need to function, so they function like that. The advantage you get with the apprentice is they're freshers, right? Even if they might not have like the highest of degrees, but they're freshers. The way you want to mold them, you can, so when you handhold them, when you onboard them, when you do the training induction, right? Whatever you teach them, they are absolutely able to grasp it, and they're able to deliver it basis the kind of training and the handholding which you do. So what we feel today is that, while we understand, yes, there is, the skill gap will always be there, though it's very nascent for us. But yeah, I think it is slowly and steadily bridging it, right? And once they have spent some time, 6 months to 1 year, I think they're as good as any other employee with irrespective years of experience. Today, if I hire an apprentice and if I hire a normal employee, my apprentice is fresher without any experience, and my normal employee is 2 years or 3 years experience in the same job. After both of them have spent 12 months, both of them are at the same platform. Okay. So it kind of helps us build the skill gap faster for apprentice than a normal employee.
Great. That's productivity levels largely improves.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's right. I would just request the audiences, if you have any questions for the panelists, please do drop it in the Q&A, box, and we'll take this up after the questions get over. Mr. Rajeev, what has been your take? What are the experiences that you have of the apprentices once they kind of complete their training, and what's your take on bridging the skill deficit or the employability deficit through the apprenticeship route?
So, Sumit, for us, actually, apprenticeship is a real bridge. It is an industry where skill is the primary focus. Even at an experience level, you get distinguished based on their skills. Right? I think the way we really look at it is when apprenticeships are there, I mean, there will be a bundle of knowledge. But mostly what we need to really look at is to convert them into work ready. So what we really look at is campus to career program or campus to work ready. So that is where we really look at apprenticeship is a program where we convert these people into an employable person in a period of time. And whatever needs, like for example, it could be a body of knowledge in terms of giving the perhaps some of that they already have, but the major stuff is skill building in terms of doing the job on-the-job training, knowing things, peer learning, work in a particular program as a shadow resources and all that. Those kind of work we do so that people pick up the skills much faster and become more employable in the sources. I think that's the typical journey in our organization, in our industry. Where,
so largely you said that it's a capability building exercise, which usually happens. You gain the qualification, but I think it's through on the job is where you build your capabilities and you become more employable and
real life projects, real life experience, on the job experience, peer learning. Because in IT services firms and IT programming field, it is also something which is peer understanding, peer learning, all that works. And that kind of opportunity people only get as an apprentice when they are introduced to a particular company. So I think that's the way we are really focusing it. But for us, in nutshell, apprenticeship is the bridge between the, from the school to the employability.
Fantastic, sir. Fantastic. I think it's nice to hear everybody's views on this employability bridging through apprenticeships. My last question to all of you, since all of you have been doing apprenticeship, and specifically you, Mr. Gyan Prakash, who's been doing it for over a decade, any suggestions and recommendations that you have to improve the apprenticeship system, which can scale the apprentices in our country?
Well, more and more HR-related companies should take up the challenge to work closely with the small and medium enterprises to understand their future needs of hiring. Work out a curriculum such that it successfully converts a plain, new, fresh graduate into an employable, productive person, specifically suiting their own business requirements. They should also approach B and C grade colleges, because generally the A grade colleges, the people get recruited very fast. But B and C is where the gap is wider. So they should try to recruit their products into apprenticeship program, which will ensure productive, sustainable employment to the graduates at the end of the apprenticeship.
Sure.
They should also tie up with potential employers to undertake apprenticeship programs on their behalf by assuring them availability of trained personnel at a predetermined point of time, and at the same time assuring satisfactory, sustainable employment to the graduates. Those who do not have that many employment opportunities, once they get this kind of apprenticeship, they become not only employable, they also gain confidence, as I had said earlier, and they have a much higher degree of success probability in their life. And that helps build the nation. This is all that I would like to say.
Sure. So largely you're recommending is that there's a more partnership between the academia and the industry, what you're recommending.
Yes.
And we hope that the new education policy, which actually talks about blending the skills with the education, I think this becomes a very absolutely a necessity ingredient to make it more successful and create more job ready people. What about you, Mr. Rajeev? What's been your take on what would be your recommendations to make the apprenticeship system more scalable?
Perhaps the only one thing comes to my mind is perhaps to create a industry-ready curriculum movement towards that. Because that's where, as a country, we are a bit lagging, and I think that's doable. And if that happens, then the volume and the velocity will greatly increase. I think that's my take, because in our system, we do engage with the institutions to do that customized program. But somehow, if it is institutionalized as in the entire system, I think that will be quite a good thing to happen for us.
Sure. So basically talking about work integrated programs kind of a thing, which can change the landscape of the education and the learning system. Sure, sir.
That the employability is kind of enhanced.
Taken care of. Absolutely.
What is that one of the pain points we have?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. What about you, Mr. Sanjeev? What's been your take on this, on your recommendations on scaling the apprenticeships?
But I absolutely echo what Mr. Rajeev and what Mr. Gyan Prakash has just said. I think, when we see over the last decade or so, I think the definition of employability has been redefined, right? And traditional academics no longer serve as the base for preparing students for the future. So what we see is, blending learning schemes like a classroom education, on-the-job training, online, vocational education, and apprenticeship. These are all the keys to aid employability, right? And we also feel that somewhere the regulatory framework, for apprenticeship has changed, and it has to change even further. While it has become more conducive, it is important for regulations to translate into necessary growth rate of apprentices. So we feel that the country which we are living in today, India, it has an immense potential. It has a lot of potential to scale apprentices. The system needs a catalytic change, we feel, right? So going forward, the way to scale up apprentices is that it has to be an integration of apprenticeship models under the, collaborate, you collaborate and then you consolidate and then finally you recognize. That's going to be the way forward, we feel. And that's how you'll be able to scale up this model.
Great. So what you're recommending is have a better framework, regulatory framework, more simplified, systems which are easy for the employers to take up apprentices. And you also emphasizing on the aspect of the employability through, your education system kind of a thing. So I think these are the three things. Two things which are coming very, strongly, from the recommendation is the academics. Academics more inclined towards the industry or becoming more sensitive to the industry needs or to the growing or the evolving needs of the industry, and also making the regulations more simplified for the employers to come forward and take up apprenticeships. Thank you so much, all of you. I think some very interesting pointers coming in. I think it should be very encouraging for the employers in your segment to take up apprenticeship, and we do hope that we've done some justice there. Let's say if there are questions coming in. I see there are a couple of questions which are there, so I think we'll spend some time in taking them. One of the stuff which is coming on is on the ITS sector. They say that it's a larger, taker of freshers. However, still a lot of ITS organizations are not aware of the apprenticeship program, and they've kind of stayed away from it. So what role NOSCOM plays in promoting it, or what role that they can play in promoting apprenticeships? There's in fact another related question, is that how to increase adaptability of apprenticeships in the ITS sector. So I think kind of interrelated, and this one has actually been directed to Mr. Rajeev. So Mr. Rajeev, any
yes,
what's your
response to this? I think if we really see, the way the Apprenticeship Act is also evolving, the wider coverage of the high-end, qualifications are also being now covered. So I think it's a natural progression, and I think ITIS look forward to slightly higher educational qualification for its own industry needs. But I guess with that coming in NAPET, we are in a much better positions to get people on an apprenticeship, and many of the freshers can be taken in the route from apprenticeship. So, and I have reasons to believe that many organizations in the industry is doing it, because the compliance of apprenticeship is also quite high in our industry in terms of making the statutory.
Sure. Thank you so much. Another question that's there is that apprenticeship system is not very well known with the students. So do you see this change in near future? I think this is for all of you. Maybe you can take it up and your viewpoint to how do we make apprenticeship more popular amongst the student community?
I'll come on that, Sumit. So you want to come on, Mr. Prakash?
Yeah, I was just saying that it is all the employers, it is their responsibility to, wherever they recruit people from, to make them aware of the apprenticeship programs that they have. In addition, all the people who are working in the HR field, particularly for placement, they should also be, taking it up as a challenge and make the students aware so that they know how to go about it and they know the benefits. And they also appreciate that this is what is going to really improve their success possibility in the future. So all these things would help a lot.
Sure.
It's responsibility of the industry, mainly.
Industry. Okay. So you're saying the industry should come forward and kind of spread the awareness with their campus connects and all that stuff.
Yes.
Sure. Mr. Sanjeev, you were saying something. Yeah.
Yes. So, what I was saying is that we feel that today, as industry, we need to educate students about this program. And also as HR folks, I think it's the onus lies on us. Somewhere if the students are not aware, I think it's a failure on our part. It's a failure on us that we have not been able to educate the students about this program. We feel it's a beautiful program. It creates employment. We feel, it's a program where we are able to quickly, kind of get the person in the organization, and at the same time, we are able to kind of help the individual to transform to the next level, very quickly. So I think today we feel this is a job, a collective job of the industry. This is a collective job of the HR leaders, whether it is through consultants, through the search portals or whatever. But I think there's a lot of work which needs to be done from the HR fraternity on this.
Sure, sure. So again, you also recommending about the Academia Industry Connect for the promoting apprenticeship. And I was just thinking that how can these existing apprentices, and they're having some success stories, which I hear from all of you, how can they become the brand ambassadors for the apprenticeships? And I think they could be the live examples of how apprenticeship can catapult their careers or transform their lives once they do that, which could be very encouraging for the youth to kind of come up and take up apprenticeships. Mr. Rajeev, what's been your take on this?
I think I agree with colleagues here. I think one thing, if I have to say, maybe that may sound a little out of box, but perhaps it may be the time to change the word apprenticeship. This has a very legacy orientation in its definition and connotation. And perhaps when we are expanding and, majority of people need, I think that's just a food for thought for us. What if we change this apprenticeship
as
and create, let's say, industry interns? In America, interns is the most popular word. And I think that will create a different branding to this whole set of people. To be getting into industry in a very different mindset.
Sure. So basically what you're trying to say is that
is this a time
the whole
to really...
word of apprenticeship, which is kind of a more discouraging. But I mean that as a concept and as a term, we need to elevate it and make it more aspirational for the youth to take it up.
That's exactly I'm saying. And in many of the Western worlds, it is already being seen.
Sure.
Any kind of apprentice, etc., is being called intern there. So they have.
So it's okay. So intern and apprenticeship, but what is the case is that we do have interns in our country as well. But I think there's basically regulations, which defines or interns in our country. So probably I think
the right time to really
look at some form of change.
I mean, right time to really review it and kind of kill the gap between these.
Sure. So I think very valid point again here. So there's another question that's coming up is that while the apprenticeship system is catching up with digitization, but yet there are many primitive practices. Example, need for the physical classroom for the field workforce. Do you see this change at all? So do you think that digitization should kind of transform the apprenticeships delivery system as well? Any one of you?
Changing. I think everything is changing. Even training modes are changing. People are working online today. I mean, people are all the kids are doing studies online. All the universities are doing online. And I have no reason to believe that industries cannot do it. Industries are doing, and I think it's absolutely a brilliant alternative to be an online. And I think the course delivery or the training delivery is not difficult. And mostly post-pandemic world, organizations are coming into hybrid mode. That will work in a very beautiful combination where some days of the week they can come to the workplace, some days of the week they can, study from. So those all possibilities are there. And I think it's time for us to really look at it.
Sure. So there's a possibility you're saying that, yes, the virtual element of the learning but mechanism will kind of set in for the theoretical component, because I do feel that maybe the practical aspect, specifically for the skill-based job roles, it may not be possible, but maybe in your case, which is more on the knowledge-based, it's done virtually. Coming right.
I had one more point here. Sure. while, yeah, it's in the IT space, definitely what you said is sure. We all have a myth and, belief that, some of the industries, the virtual world or the virtual way of training or handholding doesn't work. And, especially in our case, right, when the pandemic hit us in 2020 March, insurance is always sold. It's never bought, right? That's the concept.
True.
And that's the tagline which
Absolutely.
we say. That means you're supposed to go to a person and sell the product, right?
True.
And it's a physical engagement. We were surprised that 3 months, whole of March, April, May, there were no physical meetings. And our sales kind of doubled, and everything was virtual, everything was online, the entire training, onboarding, meeting, our partners, our employees were engaging with the customers online. So I think today, a virtual training or a virtual way of engaging with the apprentices is the new and the easiest, the most fastest, and the most productive way of engaging with them, we feel. Because gone are the days when the classroom trainings, one, they're not cost effective, right? You need to have that kind of infrastructure. You need to have a, So today I feel the virtual is far more faster, far more effective, agile way of engaging with the apprentice for them to kind of deliver what is expected from them.
Sure. Great. Mr. Gyan Prakash, do you think that that virtual learning is now going to become it's the new normal?
It is the new normal. There's no doubt about it. As I said, when this started and we were not having any projects which were, when we do work, we are working in the absolutely no man's land kind of place, because we are creating infrastructure. So there's nothing there. So we create camps and we keep people there. Now, when we have those people, we continuously have to train them and continuously update their knowledge. So normally it used to happen physically. But in the pandemic, we did everything virtual. Sure. And in that process, not only did we improve the efficiency, nobody had to really travel. The same trainer didn't have to really travel to one side to the other side to the other side. He was sitting back at his home, and he was training people at 20 sites, refreshing their courses. So actually the virtual platform provides so much more efficiency of working, which was unimaginable earlier. Nobody could even. So this is a great learning that COVID has given us. And at the same time, we also came up with the idea of virtual incident training, which means we create videos which give you a total virtual feeling. You put those on your head,
virtual reality.
And then you look at it, how things happen.
True.
So we created it because of the need of the hour, we had to create that. And that helped training very, very fast. So these are the things, I mean, these are, in any case, our industry has to continuously, catch up with whatever is happening with the technology. And if we don't take advantage of the technological developments, then we are going to be left behind. For a country like us, we cannot afford to lose any opportunity, and we have to do it. We will do it, and we are doing it.
Definitely. Absolutely. So I think COVID has definitely accelerated the adoption of digital learning, and it's no wonder the EdTech is the most growing sector at this point of time, and I think it will continue to do so. We'll just take one last question here. I think very interesting thing coming in is that, do you think that it will benefit if apprenticeship becomes the part of the mainstream education? Do you think that will help? Do you think it's going to make a mandatory stuff and it's going to help? I think you can just say yes or no, maybe, because of the paucity of time of getting apprenticeship as part of the mainstream education.
I would say that mainstream education can add one program, which could be post-normal qualification, where people could select a particular kind of job or industry and could get trained. That's all that can happen, but mainstream has to remain the way it is, of course, with evolution of the curriculum.
Sure. What about you, Mr. Sanjeev and Mr. Rajeev? Do you think it should be part of the mainstream education?
I think yes, definitely. It can be looked upon right now, because with the way things are, this is an opportunity, and we need a very, very catalytic change, as I said earlier also. So there is no harm in including this in the mainstream application, right? So definitely it can be.
Sure. Mr. Rajeev, your point?
I think the main issue around it is that practical aspect of the studies. I think when we were talking about industry ready, I think some piece of that can be more practical orientation, and that can be served through apprenticeship.
Sure.
I think those are the kind of things which are, then the learning will be far more,
Effective.
practically oriented, effective, and more creative.
Fantastic, sir. I think there's one more question which says that what is beyond 15% cap to hire apprentices in organization? Well, right now the cap is 15% under the Apprentices Act. There's a way you can go add another 3% if you go through the third-party apprentices, or else you could resort to any other guidelines or the framework which are there under the state and the central government policies through which you can engage trainees or apprentices. I think with that, we will just close the session. Thank you so much, everybody. I think interesting insights coming from all of you. I think some very brilliant questions coming from the audience, and your viewpoints and your answers to them would definitely help them clear their thoughts in doing apprenticeships. And they're welcome to all of you to joining us and sharing your valuable inputs to us.